Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Zoom into Wine. It's time for the show and your host, Ian Blackburn.
All right, good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight for Zoom into Wine. My name is Ian Blackburn, and I'm the host of Wine LA and Merchant of Wine, and also learnaboutwine.com. And I'm sporting a new hairdo today. I really cut it pretty short, but feeling a little insecure. I look a little bit like a turtle on the Zoom. So, but it feels pretty good. So yeah, I'm doing a lot of spinning right now in the morning, and my hair is driving me crazy because I come to work and it's freezing cold in the morning walking through downtown LA, and I'm sweaty. So I just decided I'm going to shave it all off, and feels pretty good. So welcome everybody as we're coming up to strength. Hi Matt, how are you?
I'm great, brother Ian. You look good, man. I like it.
Thanks, man. I'm glad you like it.
Yeah, you're looking handsome. I like it.
Well, I am I'm thrilled to have you on the Zoom, man. It's great to be able to taste these wonderful wines with you and to hear how things are going. Now, while we're coming up to strength, just real quick, Matt, what you were born in Burlington?
Just outside of Burlington, Kansas City.
No, wait. I thought you made wine in Vermont.
I did make wine in Vermont. I went to school at Groovy UV back in the 90s. Made wine up there. I know our friend from Montreal is on the call too. I spent a lot of time up in Montreal, up in Quebec. I used to do a lot of work in tractor yards up in Quebec, trading for used tractor pieces.
Well, but I was following my rock and roll fantasy in the 1990s and worked in music and worked at a radio station in Vermont, 102.7 WEQX.
Wow, how cool are you?
Remember that station?
Of course, good for you.
Yeah, I was having a really good time making $8.50 an hour at all hours of the night.
But where were you living? Where were you living?
I actually lived in Albany and drove into Manchester, which I wasn't a daily air talent. I was just doing the weekends, and I had a little sandwich shop in Albany, and I was the first Starbucks client outside of Seattle, 1993.
Oh my gosh.
My family was the first Ben & Jerry's franchiser outside of Vermont. They had the franchise in Albany, and my uncle got sick, and I started an ice cream parlor business with him, and we converted it to coffee and these hipster vegetarian sandwiches of 1993. A little bit early.
Yeah, you missed the window. You but then you missed it. That's amazing. I didn't know that.
Yeah, well.
So Ian, making $8.50 an hour is a good preparation for the wine business, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I was actually able to go into the wine industry and consider it a step up. So, yeah, I mean, most people, when they I get approached by a lot of lawyers and people that are making a good, solid living, and they want to enter into the wine industry, and I'm like, get ready. Prep yourself. It's gonna take a while to build up that ecosystem. But yeah, no, I love your story. And I remember when I came to LA, started working with wine, and I got invited to be a judge at the LA County Fair, and they assigned me the sweet wine category. And I thought this is going to be punishment for being a new judge at the LA County Fair. And they gave me all of these amazing dessert wines, and that's all I can remember coming out of Vermont. What kind of wine? What were you making in Vermont, Matt?
Mostly grape wine, to be fair.
Okay.
A little bit of blueberry here and there when times were tough. I mean, there's literally nowhere in the world better to learn the winemaking process than in Vermont, because you have to love it. There's no romance when you're working in a vineyard that is French hybrids and it's snowing and your eyeballs are freezing open. You know, it's not like a walk in the clouds like some Keanu Reeves movie. It's you know, bury the vines by hand and dig them up in the spring. And you know, yeah, we made a lot of ice wine when the conditions were right. We made a lot of very high acid red wine and like Zweigelt, and we made a whole lot of whites, Riesling, you know, real sexy varieties like Seyval Blanc and Vidal and Vignol and Chardonnay and Treminette. Those just sound amazing, but we loved it. We made some good juice up there, and I just had a bottle. It must have been like 5 months ago or something, and I brought some into my guys I work with, and I gave them a little bit, and they thought it was Grand Cru Alsace, like SGN.
Nice.
Old, weird Vermont ice wine.
Well, congratulations. That sounds great. That's not a bad thing to be mistaken for.
No, it was cool.
Well, I see we're coming up to strength here, and I want to thank everybody for joining us. Hey, Drew, how are you?
Hello, Ian. How's it going?
Fantastic.
Thank you so much for putting this event together for us. Appreciate it.
So excited to have you and Mr. Kimsey. And is there anyone else that we should be recognizing before we begin?
Hello, Ian.
Hi, Wendy.
Nice to meet you.
Pleasure to meet you too, Wendy. I'm so glad Oregon is represented tonight.
Nice.
From the vineyard.
Hi, Sue Green. Good to see you again. Bob, how are you guys? How are you and Kate doing over there? You guys ready to? Yeah, I want to introduce Bob. If you guys haven't met Bob Bloomer, Bob is and Bob. I need to ask you: is it okay if I call you Bloomer or Blummer? Do you guys know Chef Bob? He was on Food Network. And has traveled the world doing crazy stuff with wine. He got to work a harvest at Domaine Romanée-Conti on TV. And he's a big wine lover, a great friend of mine, and a fantastic chef. He's got a new cookbook called Flavor Bomb. And we were brainstorming a little bit, trying to think of, okay, so it's going to be, St. Patrick's Day, and we're going to be tasting wine. What could we do? Green, tie it in. And Bob came up with some fava beans ideas.
First of the season too, by the way.
Awesome. So now first of the season, he said it like that because he literally had to make some deals to get some fava beans for us.
It's very true. And in fact, the beans themselves are so tiny. Kate and I were shelling them earlier. They're so tiny that you want to do yourself a favor and wait for a couple of weeks before you go buy them, because with every week that progresses, the bean itself gets larger and larger inside the pot. But we'll get to that in a little bit.
All right, buddy. Well, Matt, if you wouldn't mind, we'll get started getting some, because everyone came here to drink some wine with you. And so I want to thank everybody for joining us. Lisa and Teresa, thank you. Michael and David K and family. Good to see you, everybody. Hi, Maria. Hi, Zoe. I'm so ready for the Dodgers, Zoe.
Me too.
Zoe and I are we geek out on the Dodger news. So glad that you could be here. We're gonna get started with a little Chardonnay. So let's get a little bit in our glass. And cheers, everybody. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Yeah, hey, I'm really honored to be here. Thank you so much for having us. And, I'm gonna be honest, I opened these bottles. These are old friends I haven't had for quite a while. And I opened these 4 bottles this morning at the winery, and I was blown away. I think they're all a really incredible place right now. I knew they were really great wines because they come from a great site, both the Mount Carmel Vineyard and the Kinsey Vineyard. But these 4 wines I think will deliver today, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know where you want to take this. I do have a PowerPoint to kind of show a couple of things. Why don't I cruise through that really fast?
Yeah, groovy. Yeah, let's go ahead.
And you might, want me to go back to some of it. But here is a little bit of a look at what we've got for you tonight, and then we can come and kind of take it one slide at a time. Of course, this is our
Look at that guy.
host tonight. This guy is just awesome.
That's me pre-pandemic. I didn't used to look like I was 97.
And you've been making wine in Santa Barbara for how long now?
Boy, what is it? 2021. So I've been here for 17 years. Been making wine kind of all over the world before that. Ended up in Santa Barbara, fell in love with it because it represented the best of both worlds for me. A little bit of Napa, kind of like in between Napa and New Zealand, where I'd spent most of my formative career. And, you know, I got here and I fell in love with the place. I fell in love with the people, and I fell in love with the freshness in the wines. And, you know, just to kind of focus in on the Mail Road project and the Kimsey Vineyard project, you know, back in 2012, I got here in 2004, made wine for a number of years. In 2012, I really kind of went on a voyage because I wanted to find two very small focused estate vineyards, estate projects, where I believed in the soil, I believed in the dirt, I believed in the sun, I believed in the roots, I believed that the wines could be world-class because everything was perfect. And then just as importantly, two vineyards that had owners and two projects that had owners that I connected with, and I shared a faith in the property, that we both shared this need to canonize these incredible pieces of land. And so I started working with the Mount Carmel Vineyard in Santa Rita Hills, which is owned by Ron and Nancy Piazza and the project with Michael Palmer. And they're just exquisite, wonderful people. And then I found Bill and Nancy Kimsey, who are on this call, who are the kindest, most driven, passionate vineyard owners I know. And they're just we knew we wanted to take these vineyards and show the world. And yeah, so that's kind of the background of where we are right now.
Outstanding. Now you have, you're a pretty humble guy and really don't glorify your past very much in what you just said, but you have a couple of badges on your resume, like working at Screaming Eagle and doing some pretty high-end projects. And then that kind of prepared you to parent these or canonize these amazing sites. This is Bob, by the way, Bob, and I'm not sure of the chicken's name there, Bob.
Petunia. We're showing a picture of you.
Oh, it's Petunia.
Petunia. That is a chicken, not a rooster.
No, that's a chicken.
Okay.
Did I just sort of fall into the sequence of the slides there by mistake?
Well, you know, the slides kind of come to me about 7 minutes before we get started, or I would have like shared everybody with them in advance. But Bob is going to make this with one arm tied behind his back tonight. That's going to be fun. And he'll tell you a little bit of story about this dish a little bit later. And what Matt was talking about with our first wine is it comes from the Mount Carmel Vineyard. And this is, well, that looks like quite a large vineyard. Is it all of that area there?
It's tiny. No, it's minuscule.
It's just a little star, right? That little
yeah. And the story is actually pretty incredible of this vineyard. For those of you who are not familiar, if you've ever driven down Santa Rosa Road, in between beautiful downtown Buellton and beautiful downtown Lompoc, you will see this, it looks like a giant haunted monastery, which is kind of what it is. A bunch of nuns built this monastery back in 1988, maybe 89. And long story short, they ran out of funds. They were kind of building this very extravagant monastery, and it's still up there. It's just fallen apart. It's quite stunning and quite terrifying. Don't ever spend the night in that thing unless you like mountain lions and bat guano. Not a nice combination. But you know, it is on a south-facing, pure extreme exposed slope. Ron and Nancy planted it with the nuns actually in 1990. A lot of it was own rooted. They really believed in this site, and it's just one of those things where they picked a site that is world class. It is unique in this world. It kind of sits above sea smoke a little bit. You might be familiar with. It sits about 500-foot elevation and just faces south and gets everything. It gets the sun, it gets the wind, it gets the ocean influence from the cold Pacific out west of Lompoc, and the wind just whips through there. And what you end up with are a little bit of Chardonnay. The berries are about this big, and everything about it is just miniature because it's so windy and the vines are trying to protect themselves and their offspring in terms of their seed, right, and their grapes. So they get these big thick skins and everything is amplified. And I remember when I came on in 2012 to start making the estate project up there, and we brought in the Pinot Noir and we put it in a ferment, and Pinot being kind of soft and luxurious and silky and can be kind of lighter bodied. I mean, the wine even in the fermenter was black, and it took on structure, it took on tannins, it took on a gaminess, it took on all the things I love about Pinot. And it's such a legendary piece of property. I was so honored to take over the helm of the estate program. But the two wines we're tasting today are kind of polar opposites. And that's kind of the way the Santa Rita Hills goes. Ian, I don't know your thoughts on this, but it's so funny to me that one parcel of this earth, right, with all the hills facing the same way, the soil's basically the same diatomaceous earth, nothing fancy in the winery. We just farm these beautiful vineyards very well. And you can end up with a Chardonnay like the 16, which is like a laser beam, right? It's fresh, it's focused, it's like, it has all those great things about Santa Rita, like green citrus, electric acid, like the taste of an oyster after you drink the brine, that real saltiness. And it's light, ethereal. It's not really rich and dense, it's more luminous. Mm-hmm. Not to sound overly romantic, but it's light and it's elegant and it's graceful. And then taste the 15 Pinot Noir from the estate, the Mail Road Mount Carmel Vineyard estate Pinot Noir from 15. That comes from the same slope. And you're dealing with a different vintage, to be fair, a vintage from like 15 when the grapes were very intense. It was a drought year. The harvest was very early and very hot. So we made these, what I would call vin de garde in 2015. And we'll taste the Kimsey Syrah a little while later from 15. Red wines that will live forever. Like the 15, I hadn't opened it because I kind of wanted to forget about it. And now that I open it, I'm like, okay, it's entering this window, but it's built to age and built to, it's just a wow wine to me today. I would love to hear people's feedback because Lord knows we've all spent the last 12 months inside, not really talking to that many people. So when I get a chance to pour wines I love so completely, like these four, I love to hear comments, whether you love them, whether you don't like them, whether you have questions, whether I am not making any sense, let me know.
Sure. I just want to start off by saying that I was floored when I looked at the Chardonnay and saw that it was 13.2 alcohol. And when you taste it, you can really feel how tightly knit this wine is. I mean, this thing has buku legs ahead of it too. I mean, I think the Chardonnay could probably go 10 more years and still be a fighting champion like this. It's going to be amazing.
It's not going to go down easy. It's going to be on its feet for a really long time. I opened it this morning at the winery, and over the course of the day, it's actually gotten tighter. When I usually see that in like the Kimsey Syrah, for example, I expect that because it hasn't evolved completely. It's still wonderfully young and like powerful. When a Chardonnay does that, it kind of makes you open your eyes and think, wow, that's a Chard. It has that real classic, like liquid sunshine, right? It's like a glass of liquid sunshine. Again, that's really romantic silliness, but it does have that character to me, for sure.
Well, I'd want to compare it to Chablis, which I know a lot of people might not like to go there maker wise, but I love older Chablis, and this, I think that probably in another 5 years it will even continue to take on kind of that majestic, as the fruit and the everything start to harmonize even more, because this one just has kind of a mean streak in it. I mean, it's pretty. It's not your big oaky, buttery, cuddle up and hug me wine. Mm-hmm. It's got like stony minerality and chiseled kind of character, and that apple will just kind of brighten up your entire mouth with that acidity, but gorgeously presented in a way that I think you don't really expect this from a California Chardonnay. at all.
Especially one that like faces the sun all day, every day at 500 feet. It's crazy. You know, you're a rock and roll guy. I always equate wines like this, and again, the Kimsey Syrah we're going to get to later, like to almost like the Jim Morrison when he wouldn't face the stage, when he wouldn't face the crowd. You know, they're not quite ready to face the crowd and express themselves completely. They're still kind of hemmed in a little bit and still tight. And that's the glory of wine to me, is that they can have that much personality and they can act in such moody, wonderful ways, right? For fermented grape juice to act this way is so, I love it. It's affirming for me to see these. But
And the oak barrel regimen on this wine, did you?
yeah, it's all old barrels. We don't use any new barrels for these projects. These are all just letting the fruit shine. A lot of people say that, but you know, that's really our thing. This Chard was fermented really clean. It fermented in old barrels for about 11 months. It was on lees. We like to bottle it early to capture all the vibrancy and capture the sun kind of rays in there. And so we bottled it at 12 months, and it sat in bottle for a while, and finally it's coming out. I love it. It's like a time capsule from the end of the drought. I love it.
Drew, is this current vintage 2016?
2016 is the current vintage in the wholesale market, and the wines that you'll find out there in LA hopefully soon. Right now, and then also we're on to the 18 Chard 17 Pinot for the for the current release on our mailing list. So if anyone's interested in joining our mailing list, we'd love to have you. Most of our wine is sold through there. So please, mailroadwines.com and sign on up. But yeah, I wanted to say one thing about Matt's winemaking. I'm the director of sales, and so I've poured probably hundreds of bottles in the time that I've been working with Matt. And there's just a level of elegance that Matt has in his winemaking, which I don't know if he'll ever acknowledge that himself. But there's such a beautiful structure, and the tannins are gorgeous, and the elegance in the wine and the way they're all put together. You just know that there's a craft behind it that's so well executed. And you'll find that in the Kimsey program, and you'll find that in the Mail Road program as well. It's just a wonderful opportunity to try both of them side to side.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you, Matt.
Thank you. It's all of my Kansas City charm. That's what does it.
Well, being from Vermont as well, and having that deep roots in Waitsfield and Warren area. So
deep
cheers to that.
Wow.
No, that's cool to hear. Yeah. It's funny, we hold on to these wines, which I've always felt is kind of the responsibility of the producer, to hang on to wines until they're ready. So Mail Road, we didn't even start releasing wines until they were like 2 years in bottle. So 16 is released, and it's quite nice. We made a whopping 5 barrels of it, maybe 125 cases. Just a huge production, obviously.
Flooding the market with that wine.
Flooding a veritable flood hitting the market.
Yeah.
Look out, Tulsa.
Just barely gets out of Santa Barbara County.
Look out, what I'm gonna do next. But I've never done a tasting with these two vineyards together. I love it. They go hand in hand, and the Pinot is such an interesting step. Does everybody have the Pinot in their glass? I think it's fascinating, just fascinating.
Yeah.
15 was a drought vintage again. Like I was saying, it was hot. The yields were tiny. So again, take all of the love that this vineyard wants to do, this concentrated kind of focus style, and then you just kind of put it in, burn it down a little bit, get a little, reduce it a little bit by like 20%. And just, it's like the essence of the nectar of that vineyard's Pinot Noir. It's really something special.
I besides a normal like set of Santa Barbara spices and coriander and clove, I really get almost a hint of like cinnamon in the nose of this wine right now. And we decanted ours. We poured these little 2-ounce pours for everybody yesterday to get them out, and it's just even more glorious than on opening, and really just spectacular Pinot Noir. Spectacular.
I'm glad you enjoy it. And the cinnamon is really big. Yeah, you're right. It's almost like a red hot quality in some ways. And then almost like chewing on a cinnamon stick in a wonderful way.
Yeah.
My tasting notes are really funny. I write tasting notes and then I have to like shower for 5 days. I've talked to you about this before, Ian, but like, I can't look at my wife in the eye. I can't like, would you write like Mexican breadfruit as a tasting note? She's like, what is wrong with you? But I agree with you with the cinnamon, the spice, the game, the almost like baking spice qualities. And I was so happy because for me, Pinot Noir isn't always sugar and spice and everything nice. It's rather complex and brooding and like we always talk about, I want that hint of corruption. I want that hook that makes it stick, that sets the wine and you want more and more of it. Simple is overrated, I think, in wine. I think purity is beautiful, but complexity is really something otherworldly in fermented grape juice. And this site has it in for Dees. This is a combination of 828, which is a kind of a classic California Ontov clone. Like it's this big, clone that gives these huge clusters. And then it's a combination of the Ontov 828 and then this little bitty selection from Sanford and Benedict that gives us clusters the size of like a cork in a Goodyear. And it is gamey and mushroom and sous-bois and all those things. And you kind of take the really powerful red fruit and then you put in the black pepper spice and sous-bois and fungus, all the things from the Sanford Benedict clone. And it's a marriage. It works. It ages impeccably.
Are you using a little stem in there? Is there a kiss of stem? No.
Yeah, there is. I would say in 15, there might be 10%. That's kind of the max I really use, about 10%.
I know. According to your tasting notes, it's 5.
Oh, thank you. I would have guessed 6. Maybe 5.25, but yeah, okay, I'll take that. But,
so Matt, the clone from, we originally took clones. My understanding, Ron actually approached, Richard Sanford, the first vineyard site in Santa Barbara County, and actually took the Chardonnay clone from Richard, originally 100% Wente clone that we have on the vineyard site, and then also Mount Eden clone, and then brought that over to Mount Eden clone Pinot Noir and brought that over to Mount Carmel as well. So, and both of those are all own rooted on the vineyard site.
Correct.
How much of the own rooted aspect of it do you think plays into these into these wines? So like, does it have a big play in how it's structured or the acid or whatnot? What do you find?
For me, it's really tough, right? It's hard to take terroir as a whole, as this giant bubble, right, and take little pieces of it out and to weigh them, to quantify them. It's huge. Own rooted is huge. You have one metabolic system. You don't have a rootstock and then a scion, and they have to communicate through a graft. And you ever play telephone as a kid and you say something and then 5 seconds later someone else is saying something different? Communication between scion and rootstock is very difficult. Seamless communication between a root and a trunk and leaf system is incredible. I see the vines grow different. The clusters stay smaller. They ripen more evenly. They don't stress out and freak out like adolescents. They act more like mature adults. When it's hot, they can relax and deal with it. When it's cold, they can deal with it. For me, what's more important than that, perhaps, is the combination of own rooted and then vines that are now, 30 years old, 31 years old. There's not a lot of vines that are that old. Obviously, the legend Richard Sanford, who you mentioned, his vineyard is, I'll always refer to it as his vineyard. And S&B is now 50 years old.
He turned 80. He just turned 80 yesterday.
Can I tell a quick Richard Sanford story, because I adore him?
Yeah.
He's the most amazing man. He's a very gentle, for those of you who don't know him, he's a very gentle, very zen, very wonderful, thoughtful, kind. Like every time my wife sees him, she says, I just love him. That kind of guy. And the last time I talked to him, he came up to me and he said, do you ever just sit in a river? Isn't that awesome? Like,
of course.
Of course. That's what I was doing this morning when we spoke. I love a man like that. Anyways, but yeah, so that the root or the selection of the Pinot and Chardonnay come from a noble place, and they've been put in a new noble soil, and it's unique. There's nothing in the world like Mount Carmel. There's nothing in the world like these Pinots and Chards. They're just one of those sites that, I never would refer to anything in California as a Grand Cru because that's a French term, but it is a vineyard of distinction, specificity, typicity, and it deserves a legendary status, I think, as a site.
So here comes a fairly wine geeky question for you. Sarah, thank you for it. You may have mentioned spontaneous fermentation technique in the Chardonnay. And to you, is that just natural yeast?
With the Chardonnay, sometimes, yeah, you bet. We'll do a pied de cuve. We'll take some juice and we'll just take it out into the vineyard in like a jug, and we'll leave it there and it'll start to ferment spontaneously, and then we'll bring in the juice sometimes and inoculate it with that. Other times we'll just let it go native. Other times I'll inoculate it. Definitely not really into recipes as such with wine, because every year is different and the nitrogen levels can be different and your sugars can be different. And with the Pinot Noir, we do occasionally do spontaneous fermentation. It's a great question. But the Pinot is so crazy and rugged, and like, I almost prefer to have some control, some semblance of organization in the ferment. So a lot of times we will inoculate with some really selected yeast strains. But you can't tame that Pinot. I mean, as cultivated as sometimes we go on in the winery, it stays wild and stays true to itself regardless of its upbringing.
So you use a French yeast on this, right, Matt? Is that how you normally when you're inoculating?
Yeah, let's put it this way. It doesn't really speak French, but has a French accent.
French accent. Okay, good.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Sometimes we use BGY, which is isolate from France. But the yeast is, I won't get on my soapbox. I'm not going to get on my soapbox. But one of many things. And I think in the world right now, there's a lot of focus on clonal selection, and there's a lot of focus on yeast. And to me, those are just like interchangeable with like barrels and, fermentation temp. They're important, but I'm really learning it's more of an interaction between soil, roots, trunk, leaves, the sunshine, the wind, Mother Nature's moods, the curveballs she throws to you, and the people you work with. That to me is the story. Ferment too, and ferment's cool, and ferment's wonderful. That's why we're all here. But yeah, we kind of do them all a little bit. It's a great question.
Cool. So Sarah, if you have any other, she called that a beginner's question, by the way.
Oh, that's super. That's not a beginner's question. That's a pretty complex question.
Sarah, if you want to bring it on, you're going to have to ask it yourself, though. So, David K, how are you enjoying those first two wines?
Wow. Let me just say, just a quick shout out to Bob. We did we used lima beans, but we had in the food tonight goes incredible with these wines, especially Chardonnay. So fantastic. But Matt, we've met before at Honada and a couple of times, but these wines, the concentration and I don't know what it is, but I can see that, I think like Ian mentioned before, that the old world is looking to California, I think, because in particular, one reason is because of wines like these, the typicity and the concentration, and it's not overblown. It's just, it's all about, I don't know, it's just the balance, the length, everything is there. Like, these are outstanding wines. You rate these outstanding wines. I have a question, like when I'm trying the Pinot Noir, I can taste the usually in the nose, you get the floral, you get the violets or the rose or whatever, the blossom, but I get that on the palate. And is that just because of the soil, of where it's from? Like, it hits all the marks. So I wonder where that sort of comes from.
Such a great question. And I want to touch on something you said earlier, and it's great to see you, David. I mean, I think that, your comment that the French look to us sometimes, I think it goes both ways, right? Because we obviously find so much inspiration. I know like Bill and Nancy Kinsey are very, influenced and inspired by the Rhone Valley. And I think I'm very inspired by the Rhone Valley and by Burgundy. And I think it's funny to realize, right, that while we would kill for their minerality, they would likely kill for our sunshine. And don't quote me necessarily on that, but at the end of the day, we have so much to embrace here. And both of these vineyards tonight that I'm going to have the honor of pouring, they straddle that line between these are California vineyards. They have California sunshine, but they have kind of an old world structure and a feeling to them that's something different. And your question about perfume and about floral notes, I couldn't agree more. And these two vineyard sites have them, and there's some vineyards that do and some vineyards that don't. I call it inner perfume, because aromatically there's a ton of roses, there's a ton of lavender sometimes in these wines, violet in the Kimsey, and back and forth. But then when you drink it and you breathe retronasally, it's like this whole blossoming of flowers on your palate. And it's just something that's inherent in the vine-soil relationship and the way it's expressed in the fruit development. And I would love to know what the heck it is, whether it's a specific terpene or it's some aromatic phenolic. I mean, Lord knows, but it is pronounced to me. The white is the Chardonnay is incredibly floral. White flowers, jasmine, honeysuckle. The Pinot to me is, I mean, it's sultry. It's a real sultry perfume. And if I get the answer, I'll let you know.
Okay, thanks. It's brilliant. Thank you so much.
I'm gonna throw a curveball and let Chef Bob talk about fava beans for a second, because Bob came with this idea about the fava beans for us, and Bob had to beg, borrow, and steal some fava beans. They actually just pieced them together, right? You took a bunch of other beans and made them look like fava beans. Is that what you had to do?
Not really, but favas have a season, and we're just getting into the season. But we're about a week or two ahead. The season's about a week or two ahead. In our farmers market, the first stall had them last week, and I had to reserve some. I want to tell you a quick backstory. And Ian, I have a quick question for your audience. Has anyone in the audience, had they ever gone to grilled cheese night at Campanile back in the aughts, as they say, in the early 2000s? Anybody nodding their heads?
I don't see any. There are a number of black screens tonight. Maybe one of them, but so far we're
All
doing
right. Well, regardless, quick backstory. In the early 2000s, Nancy Silverton, who's now like the huge Nancy Silverton, was running a restaurant called Campanile with her husband at the time, whose name was Mark Peel. And on Thursday nights, they would have grilled cheese nights. And this was like all the food cognoscente from Los Angeles sort of came in, bellied up to the bar, and Nancy would make these incredible grilled cheese sandwiches and serve them up with all sorts of wines. The Campanile had an amazing wine list, as evidenced by the fact that the somm at the time was Manfred Krankel, who went on to start a very small winery called Sine Qua Non that you might have heard of. And anyways, it was kind of a legendary night, and all of the food cognoscenti from Los Angeles would descend there and have her grilled cheese sandwiches. And sadly, of course, Campanile has long since been shuttered and is now a great restaurant called Republic. And are we good, Kate? And so you can no longer go down there and enjoy these evenings, which have now become very legendary. But I wanted to make for you one of the sandwiches that she would make on a regular basis at this time of year, and that was a fava bean crostini, which truthfully isn't really a grilled cheese because there's no cheese in it, and it's not even a sandwich because it's a crostini. It's like a one slice of bread assembly. But I'm going to show you how to make the fava bean puree right now, and then Ian, I think you're going to taste some more wines. And let me just add to the conversation and say how fantastic these wines are. These are stupendous. They're so elegant and intense and so European in style, but with that beautiful California twist, which makes them amazing. So, and as noted, this fava bean puree will go, and the crostini will really work pretty well with all of the wines, the two we've tasted, I know, and also the two that we're about to taste. I'm pretty confident that across the board, these wines are going to pair well with this crostini. So with that said, I want to start off and show you how to make the fava bean puree, which is the star of this crostini. So this is a fava bean, and as the season goes on, the bean itself gets bigger and bigger. It's like a pea pod, and when you open it up, no worries.
It's my first time Zooming.
All right, so I'll just do this. I'll do this one more time. So I have the fava bean pod.
Yeah.
There we go.
And we're going to open it up, and here we have these gorgeous fava beans. Now, unlike a pea that you would just take the shelled pea and eat, the fava bean has a pretty thick skin on it. And conventional wisdom says that when they're very young, as they are right now, you can eat the skin. But I just tried one this morning, and truthfully, they are very bitter. So you don't want to do that. So what you want to do is you want to take your fava beans after you've potted them and put them in boiling water for about 3 minutes. And so after they've boiled, they look like this. So they have, the skins actually puff up, and then they're very easy to pop out of the skin, just like that. And you toss the skin and you keep the bean, which I'm adding here. It's a little bit of a tedious process, and my suggestion for how to deal with it is to either talk on the telephone or drink wine, as Kate says, or listen to a podcast or whatever. But here's some of the detritus from shelling the beans, and then I had all of the little casings as well. But we're going to get to the point where you end up with all of these beans, and so now it's a very quick process to cook them. The first thing that I'm going to do is take a combination of, I have some garlic and some shallot, and I'm going to add that to my pan, which I forgot to preheat, so it's going to take just a little second. And I'm adding a little, at the end, we're going to put a little bit of bacon. When we assemble this, after we taste these last two wines, we are going to finish the sandwich with a little bit of bacon. So I cooked the bacon off already, and I'm using the bacon fat to cook these beans in.
Good man.
So again, if you happen to be a vegetarian and you're not going to put the bacon on your crostini, then I suggest you just use some olive oil, which is what I normally do. But I had the bacon fat, zero waste, extra flavor. I mean, how can you say no, right? And also,
Bob, can I interrupt for a second?
Yeah.
I don't think many people know that you were like a spokesperson for a Canadian zero waste movement, and really did a lot of things to teach people about how to lower their footprint and things like that, and for the Canadian market. What would you do with those fava bean shells? What is the next thing for them? Is it a compost straight?
Well, there are lots of things that you can do with a lot of ingredients that you traditionally throw out. The tops of beets, the tops of radishes, fennel fronds, like all those greens that you normally go like this and throw them out. There's plenty of things you can do with that. Lots of things you can do with leftover little slivers of onion that you would normally throw out. But when it comes to these pods, and that's a really good question, Ian, but truthfully, the best thing you can do with these is use them to compost. The pods as well as the casings. Even our chickens reject them. We tried.
Okay.
But that's the sad truth. All right, so the garlic and the shallots have started to loosen up here. Actually, they're cooking very quickly, and so I'm going to take the beans and add these to the pan. I'm going to take a little bit of rosemary. And truthfully, the beans, because I blanched them, I cooked them in hot water. I boiled them for about 4 minutes, 3 or 4 minutes. They're pretty done. the garlic and the shallots are pretty done. I'm going to add just a little bit of the water that I use to boil the beans in. As you can see, it's taken on a bit of the starchiness of the beans. And so this is just going to take one more minute. I'm going to add, while it's cooking, I'm going to add a little bit of salt, a little bit of pepper. And this is just one more step, Ian. It's going to take another 30 seconds. And then I'm going to go back to you and we'll taste these last two wines and we'll come back and we'll assemble this. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take the rosemary, and now that it's started to well, it's not really cooking, but it's softening up. So I'm able to pull the stem off it. And I'm accelerating this process by maybe 1 or 2 minutes. So I might want to let this really just simmer away for a couple of minutes, but in the name of getting back to the wine, which is the star of the show, I'm going to take it and add it to a food processor.
You shelled all those beans. That took a long time. You sure you want to do that?
And now I'm going to add a squeeze of lemon.
Okay.
Give that a whirl. And as the food processor is pureeing the beans, I'm going to drizzle in maybe 2 or 3 tablespoons of oil. And if I wanted to cut down on the oil I was using, I could also use a little bit more of this very starchy water. There we go. And here you see we have this gorgeous fava bean puree. So I'm going to pretend that I'm back on television, Ian, and I'm going to say when we come back, we're going to assemble our fava bean, bacon, and poached egg crostini.
You are the man. You are the man. All right. Cool.
I got to give a shout out to Bob. I know you're from Montreal. You're from Quebec.
I am. And, I wanted to give a shout out back to you, first of all, because I love your wines. Second of all, because I spent a lot of time in Vermont, and I'm a big fan of their ice ciders. And we have a very favorite ice cider, Eden ice cider, which if you haven't had, I highly recommend, from a very small Ma and Pa distillery or cider house.
Eden frozen cider. All right, I'm writing it down.
Yes.
I'm in. We come from some of the greatest food in the world. So Montreal cuisine is the finest of the fine.
All right, and over to you.
Thanks. Well, appreciate it.
Cool. So Matt, I'll show a couple more pictures on our slideshow. And see how that goes here.
Oh yeah, there's Carmel. There's that terrifying monastery.
Right here.
Nobody ever wants to sleep in.
It does look a little scary.
Oh, picture doesn't do it justice.
But that vineyard, man.
So the nun who was in charge recently passed away, sadly, but was living and must have been 90 something, living in a little house to the left there. So they were still up there. The nuns were still up there. Pretty amazing. You can see how rugged that place is. It's a rugged, mean environment up there.
Yeah, just looking at the fact that every vine looks like it's growing in a slightly different direction just tells you that it's probably hit from all different angles, right?
And the best wines in the world grow in the margins, right? That's something we've always believed. And I think that, both of these projects, their beauty is that they're a state, right? So that they're from a place, they taste like a place. And Ruben Solorzano, my brother from another mother, we farm them, and he's really just a brilliant human being. But these vineyards are both in the margins. Mount Carmel is might as well be on Mars. And Kimsey is kind of graced by being on this very southwest, kind of very cold corner of Ballard Canyon. I mean, they're the definition of growing in the margins. I love it.
Super
Yep,
cool.
Carmel.
Wow.
Yeah, amazing. So there's the view from the top of the chapel, I believe. You're way up. You're at 500-foot elevation, probably up there, overlooking Fiddlesticks, and there you're actually overlooking at Sanford Benedict on the kind of north-facing slope there. Cool. Santa Rita is magical. It's only 2 hours from LA. You guys should all be here every weekend.
Coming soon.
Yeah.
All right, so we tried our Chardonnay, which Coloni gave 95 points to, and gave 96 to the Pinot. Tremendous wines.
Good wines.
Now we're going to step over to Ballard Canyon. Mr. Kimsey is on the Zoom with us tonight as well, and this is his vineyard. And what do you want to say there, Matt?
Yeah, I met Bill and Nancy in 2012. Actually, probably in 2011 we met, and I went up to look at their vineyard, and I met them, and it was, it was kind of love at first sight. We immediately connected and knew that we wanted to work together to, again, like I mentioned, canonize this property. And like Mount Carmel, this is, like I was saying, it's just in the margin. So the wind is colder, the soils stay a little cooler, everything about it stays a little more crisp, a little more fresh than its surrounding neighbors. And Kimsey is located in Ballard Canyon, which is a remarkable AVA. But it also is kind of an outsider in the sense that if you've ever been to beautiful downtown Buellton, City of Light, City of Magic, if you drive down the 246 and you pass the ostriches, if anybody knows what I'm talking about, and then you go left up Ballard Canyon Road, you're not that far outside of civilization. You're literally like 3 blocks outside of civilization. But there's this wonderful kind of plateau, a couple 100-foot elevation. And the Kimsey's planted this property. It's really minuscule in the world of vineyards. It's a very small, specialized property. They planted it, probably 13 years ago now, 14 years ago. And because of their love of the Rhone Valley wines, they planted it largely just Syrah, a little bit of Grenache, and some Roussanne Marsanne, or Roussanne Viognier. Sorry, we didn't do Marsanne. We've added some Grenache Blanc. But everything about it is everything about it is different. So it was planted correctly. It was planted densely. A lot of vines per acre. The soils are so mixed up, almost like a puzzle. There's alluvial gravels, there's a little bit of clay, like almost like a loamy clay, there's some sandy parts of this vineyard. And because it's so far southwest, it hits all that weather that hits Carmel and blows through and makes it so frigid and extreme, comes in and kind of turns up and kisses the Kimsey vineyard. It's not as extreme. The days get warmer, the nights get colder, but that cold air keeps it almost like, it almost lives between two worlds. It's almost like Ballard Canyon meets the Santa Rita Hills. And Bill and Nancy have really cared for it and really farm it, allow the team to really farm it and to the nth degree. Everything about it is done to perfection. And what gets me about these wines and what makes me just absolutely, fall head over heels in love with these wines is they have this very chameleon-like character, where they can be very brooding and they can be very dense and they can be very big, California ripe wines. But at the end, they have this way of almost like, I joke about it, but like putting on an ascot and like becoming very elegant and refined on the finish. They kind of zip up and they become fresh, and then, they're not light on their feet, but they become fresh and buoyant. And, with the Grenache from Teen, it's a year younger than the 2015 Syrah, obviously, but the Grenache, David, you were talking about inner perfume, and that Grenache to me is the definition of inner perfume. I admittedly have a love-hate relationship with Grenache in the state of California, because I found a lot of vineyards produce a Grenache that is lacking substance and soul, where Grenache needs to be soulful. it can't just be a red wine that can be innocuous. It has to be soul. And the first time I tasted a Grenache from Kimsey Vineyard in 2012, our first fermentation of it. I mean, it was almost like chewing on a cigar. It had so much substance and soul and depth, and I just found it to be the most singular Grenache from California I'd ever tasted, period. And it continues to floor me every time. You know, we make, talk about whopping production. We make 2 barrels of this one. We make 50 cases of Grenache. That's why I was so excited to open this wine today, because I don't taste it, you know? And the 16 to me has always been one of my favorites of the Grenache world that we've made here. It's silky, but it also is enough grit and earthiness to keep it interesting and sincere and soulful, like I was saying. It has guts, but it also has refinement. And to me, that's the definition of what Ballard Canyon should be.
It's gorgeous. If anybody else wants to weigh in, Mr. Kimsey, if you'd like to say anything, do you get to try your wine very often here?
Only every night if we'd like. So yeah, we do have plenty of opportunity, and thanks Ian for including us tonight, and we're very proud of the vineyard, and of course we love Matt and the great job he's doing for Kimsey in all respects. He's really been great.
What drew you to this site?
Well, when we moved to Santa Barbara many years ago, we pretty quickly fell in love with the Santa Ynez Valley, and Nancy and I went there often and wanted to buy a property, and we found this place that was 45 acres that had nothing had ever been planted there. It was only weeds, so it was pristine, and we had it tested, and it tested very positive for a vineyard, and so we thought it was a great site. It has a great undulation, as you can see from this photo that's on the screen now. So it's a beautiful site, and unusual for the Ballard Canyon AVA, as Matt has said. But it's a great site, and it's a beautiful place, and we fell in love with it then, and we still do.
Nice.
I was there last Friday, and it was just beautiful. It was a cloudy day, and if anybody saw the Instagram photo, it was an unusually beautiful time. It's a beautiful place.
I think this Grenache is quite. I mean, this isn't. I think it's in line with the Melroad wines, where they're not like overly showy. You really have to get into the glass and put it in your mouth, and really appreciate the depth and the persistence and the concentration and the how, and probably have to have a little bit of passion to really experience these wines at the highest level too, because these wines are so beautifully built, and you can really tell that they come from a very significant spot. And so you got the great clay, Matt, and you're a great artist, and you've built some statues here. These are really gorgeous.
Yeah, I'm really proud. I always kind of see the role of winemakers. We've talked about it before, Ian, a little bit, but I see the role of a winemaker in the sense that you want to learn and grow with a site, right? It's kind of a dance. It's in some cases it's like both of these sites, because they're difficult because they're kind of marginal position as far as being cold and a little bit chilly, right? A little bit challenging to grow. It's more like a tango, but it's a long-term, lifetime kind of relationship. And I feel like as a winemaker, when I work with Ruben in the vineyard, we basically go all year long. We farm the vineyard really, really, really well. Bill and Nancy say, let's do it. Let's make the greatest wines we can. And when we decide to finally pick, we've done so much work in the vineyard that it's almost like there's a knock on the door, right? And all of a sudden there's this beautiful marble statue, like you were alluding to. And as a winemaker, I think you can take a piece of sandpaper in one hand, or you can take a big hammer and a chisel in the other, And you can either like sand it and make it a little bit smoother, a little more suave, a little bit more charming, maybe help correct some of the issues that nature created. Or you can take a hammer and a chisel and put on your beret and like say, I don't want to make a wine like this. I want to make a wine that tastes like what I want to make because I'm an artist, right? And I'm definitely a sandpaper person as opposed to a hammer and chisel person. I view myself as a steward of this vineyard and a shepherd of sorts. And this vineyard, Kimsey Vineyard, I mean, specifically, is just gives this wine that is statuesque and just enough silk and just enough kind of these charmingly powerful tannins to make it this really cool balance. But that Grenache is fun to taste right now. So much fun. What would you pair it with? I would love to hear people's thoughts because this wine for me is a wonderful challenge for pairing. And the fava bean, I bet, would be beautiful with it. But anybody have anything that comes to mind? I would love to hear it.
Yeah, Bob, I'd love to hear you weigh in on this too. But, you know, Grenache is often discussed in the language of Pinot Noir, but with a little bit more muscle, a little bit more tannin. And this definitely, to me, could kind of lean into a Pinot-oriented dish, or, you know, you could do something much bigger, because I think the depth of this wine allows it to have many different dance partners as far as cuisine. But
it could almost roll with like I love saying things like pigeon, because who's having pigeon for dinner tonight? I know Drew Daigle is. You're having pigeon tonight? Lovely.
Of course, those Bob. Absolutely.
Wonderful. I go back to my old standby with that wine would be like, I love taking chicken thighs, like bone in, skin on chicken thighs, and marinating them, and then just blackening like on the grill, getting all that carbon and char on there, and real tender chicken with like a nice salty kind of marinade. And a wine like that would just gobble it up. I would love it. But the Syrah is a totally different beast, isn't it? I mean, the Syrah from Kimsey, somebody, a wonderful writer named Matt Kettman actually, wrote a tasting note that I'm very jealous of, and so I'll quote him. But he said that Ballard Canyon Syrah, specifically Kimsey, was like, you're gonna love this one, bear with me. If you cooked a tri-tip on the grill, our home state cut of meat, if you put a tri-tip on the grill and you charred it, like blackened it, so that even like a crunchy corner, just carbon and meat goodness, and you had kind of rubbed it with like an Indian spice rub, and then you served it with like a reduced cherry sauce. That is what Ballard Canyon Syrah tastes like. And it's funny because this wine now has been open for 12 hours, and Kettman's kind of right. It's just a fascinating, spiraling, hedonistic kind of intoxicating nose. And it takes you one place, and then the palate takes you somewhere else, and then the structure takes you somewhere even completely different. It is still expanding, it's breathing, it's developing, it's evolving, and comes from this really powerful Vin de Garde 2015. The selections for this grape, or this wine, come from ungrafted blocks. So there is actually a commonality between the two. They're non-grafted, between the Carmel and the Kimsey Vineyard. I hadn't really thought of that, but they're both unrooted. And this comes predominantly from a block, to go back to clonal communication, the clonal question. This comes from a block that has, we call it the Massal block. But what it is basically embracing the differences in a vineyard, as opposed to pushing like a kind of monoculture approach to a vineyard block. So this is all Syrah, but it is clone 174, clone 383, clone 470, clone 877, Alban 1, Alban 2, Estrella River. I think that's it. There might be Alban PB in there as well, but you're dealing with 7 clones, 7 collections of, or selections of Syrah, sorry. And they're planted one by one. So you pick it all and you get really green fruit, and you get really red fruit, and you get really dark fruit, and you get some raisins, and you get some black pepper spice. You get all these wonderful things. And I remember when I came to California, I worked in Napa. And I remember the wonderful people I worked with, they like to claim that their vineyard looked like it had been vacuumed, right? It was perfect and everything was in the right place. And that's how I wanted everything to be the same and ripen the same. And you pick the north side and the south side and the top of the hill and the bottom, the sun side and the shade side. You're picking all the same fruit. What this block at Kimsey has taught me is that it's better to embrace the complexity the grapes want to give you and the vineyard site wants to give you. So we really pick this once or twice and just bring it all 7 selections. And that wine shows it to me. It's like a 9,000 piece puzzle. So many pieces in there.
That's cool. I just got a new toy, and I seasoned my new barbecue yesterday. As I burnt my other one out, I got a Traeger wood grill, and you can choose the type of wood chips that you use. It's definitely a part of their business plan is to sell you this expensive wood that they feed the fire with, but it is it's really a high performance barbecue, like convection type of wood smoke. So anything that I'm going to pair these wines with anything I can put on that barbecue, and I can't wait to do like I'd love to have like I think lamb chops would be really fun for sure with both of these wines. But I actually kind of prefer and it's a cheaper cut from it's like a little lamb steak. What is it, Bob? Can you help me? Is it just called a lamb steak?
Well, you'd get sort of a leg of lamb that would be cut into steaks, something like that.
Yeah, it's got like a little piece of bone in there, but I really like a little bit more richness that you get there. The chops can be so gamey, and you can eat like 30 of them, and you're still hungry. But but I can't wait to cook something like that with these wines. They're both, and it'd be really fun to have a dinner with both of them and kind of surround the dish. Does anybody have anything else they want to add there? And please, if you're watching at home, chime in. We'd love to hear from you and get some feedback. These wines are just too special and too beautiful not to get some more comments.
Matt, I had a question about you mentioned you touched upon the growing season in Mount Carmel and the Santa Rita Hills being a lot longer. I know it's close to like 100 days in the Santa Rita Hills, as opposed to say, close to 80 in Burgundy or so. What's the difference between like, say, the Rhone region, and the Kimsey Vineyard?
They're dramatically different. It's tricky. It's tricky to compare them as growing regions. I find more similarities with what's in the glass structurally. Not even aromatically as much as I'm a structure guy. I love tannins. It's what makes me happy. The Rhone Valley has highs and lows, and depending on where you are. I a lot of times, if I'm forced into a corner to say this tastes like one specific region, boy, Kimsey just tastes like Kimsey. The Cerrado, maybe.
How about for like the entire Ballard Canyon AVA? Is there a similarity in terms of growing region for, say, Rhone? No.
I don't think so. Not necessarily. The soils are very different. The grape selection is very similar. The diurnal temperature shift can be very similar, actually. They can have hotter summers a lot of times in the Rhone Valley, depending on how far north they are and what kind of year they have. The rain is very different, which is a dramatic part of it. We just don't get any rain. It's tricky. But to me, all of Ballard Canyon, it falls somewhere between, I think at its most noble, it's closest to Hermitage because of the guts and the richness and the statuesque kind of construction that Ian was talking about.
Yeah.
But with an amazing dollop of California fruit, right?
Yeah, of course. The California sunshine.
And a little California depth.
Yes.
Sometimes the wines of the Rhone can be a little thin and angular, and there's like such a pool. Yeah, it's such a pool of depth in the mouth that just, that's what happens when you get this nice, lovely ripeness. You get this kind of pool, the deeper pool, and to appreciate. And I think decorate maybe, or maybe the decoration is too hard for you, Matt. Maybe you like to just leave it alone and appreciate it.
No. Look, God, I consider myself so lucky. I'm so spoiled as a winemaker, because I think that, being a part of these two brands and these two vineyards, as a winemaker, to be able to make wines that are respectful of place, yet to find places that make wines that I want to drink, like to be thrilled to open these 4 bottles after this much time in bottle, and just to be like a kid in a candy store with those 4 bottles in front of me this morning. And, I called all the winery team over. I was like, look what we have, and to then open them and realize that this is what I like to drink. And it just happens to be that I've been really blessed to work with these vineyards and these teams. But the Kimsey Syrah right now and the Kimsey Grenache are, they're in my wheelhouse for sure, the way they are. And the Kimsey Grenache to me is a little bit more approachable, where the Kimsey Syrah is like turned its back a little bit, but it's just starting its evolution. I'm blown away by the turn it's taken since this morning. It's become almost more withdrawn, and it's demanding more time in bottle, or a decant and a really like high protein steak, right? Like a bone-in ribeye, or a leg of lamb, like you're talking about, or bruised pigeon, of course. But
why is it my vision?
I just like when I make recommendations for food that nobody ever eats. But I will say one thing interesting, because we've been trying to eat less meat in our house, and I found this really interesting, like with farro, with grains, and like a really lovely feta, like a really pronounced feta cheese, and like really lovely root vegetables, parsnips and sweet potatoes and things like that. Actually, the Rhone reds from Ballard Canyon, in Kimsey specifically, certainly the Grenache, with a meal like that, it's fascinating. With the feta, the saltiness of the feta, and kind of the warmth of those root vegetables, it actually pairs stunningly. Never thought I would say that, but it's true.
Hey Matt, we're in a similar situation. We're not eating as much animal protein once in a while, but very seldom. But we have tonight. Maria did these baked potatoes with sour cream, benevolent bacon. Have you heard of benevolent bacon? It's smoky, and we used it on the crostini. And it's absolutely, because of the smoke and that savory, it's blown these wines. It's perfect for both these wines. So if anyone else to try that,
I love it. That's what I love about this industry. That's what I love about these conversations. Is I would love to try that. I mean, let's think outside the box. And I think people get really stuck in like, well, this has to be with this, and this has to be with this, and forget about it.
I can, if you're doing roasted vegetables, I would highly recommend trying a miso butter, which is very meaty yet completely vegetarian. Soy-based, of course. And if you mix about 2/3 butter and 1/3 miso, and then use that on any of your roasted vegetables, it adds another layer, depth of flavor that would really go beautifully specifically with the Syrah.
Mm-hmm.
And staying in the vegetarian, actually even vegan world. Well, except for the butter. Except for the butter part.
That's a small part. It's vegan-ish.
What was it again? What was it? 2/3 what?
Miso. Miso. It's fermented soy paste.
2/3 miso and
soybean
1/3.
paste.
And 1/3 what?
2/3 butter, 1/3 miso, and just let the butter rise to room temperature, and you just put it, whip it together, and it'll last in your fridge forever. And I put that on like a roasted sweet potato, or and it's actually great on proteins as well. Just a pat of that on a grilled steak or anything like that.
How's your concoction coming together, Bob?
We're set. We're ready to go. And it's funny. I feel like I'm back at Campanile, because the beautiful thing about Campanile was there was so much wine flowing around, and so many people at the bar, and people buying people drinks. You would be drinking all sorts of different wines, like the spectrum of wines that we're drinking tonight, and still magically they would pair beautifully with a lot of these grilled cheese sandwiches. So allow me to assemble this, and Matt, I'll say that I love the spectrum that the Syrah, the Grenache and the Syrah created, because the Grenache I found still very soft and elegant, kind of, as you were saying, would pair well with pigeon or spotted owl, for example. I think would be great.
A nice roasted broiled spotted owl.
Yeah, you know, and whereas I think the Syrah would go better with bald eagle, grilled bald eagle.
Komodo dragon, actually.
Seriously, folks. No, but this Syrah is very muscly, and Kate, who has a fantastic palate, said she got some cassis at the end of it, which is, I think, as soon as she said that, I got that as well. But
like true cassis, the green and the black. Yeah.
Yes.
Agree. Totally.
Okay, so back to business. We're going to finish off. When we left you before the commercial break, we had just made this fabulous fava bean puree. And I put this in the fridge. So for the last 15 minutes, it's been in the fridge. And whereas earlier it was almost falling off the spatula, now I can count to 10 and do this and it'd be fine. So I used my panini maker. I took a beautiful loaf of bread that I bought. For anybody who's in Los Angeles, my favorite bakery right now is the Lodge Bakery on the west side. So I've taken this beautiful piece of Lodge seeded bread and grilled it till it's nice, super crispy. And I'm taking a single clove of garlic and rubbing it across the surface. And now I'm using my very best olive oil and pretty well just drowning this piece of crostini, this panini piece of bread with this beautiful oil. And now the next step is to take my fava bean puree, smear it on top of this crostini. And I'm going to add just a wee bit of salt because I tasted it. And even though I added salt in the process of cooking it, I felt it needed a little more. So I'm going to finish it with a bit of salt, a little bit of black pepper. I'm going to add this bacon, which is just bacon that I cooked up, let it cool down, and then I sort of chopped it up into a bit of a bacon dust. I'm going to slice it now because it's hard to slice it after. Plate it up, and then one last step. I'm going to add this poached egg. Now here's the money shot, Ian.
Oh, look at that, baby.
There we go.
Oh, yeah.
That is my homage to this gorgeous Syrah. And I would lift up the glass of the Grenache, but we've drank it all. But these are beautiful, and honestly, I think this crostini would do justice to any of the four wines that we tasted tonight.
That is a fantastic job, Chef Bob. Thank you so much.
That's awesome.
Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure.
That was awesome.
And thank you, Kate. Beautiful photography.
Thank you for the wines.
Matt, I'm going to send you a bottle of this Eden. I'm going to get your address from Ian, and I'm going to send you a bottle of the Eden Ice Cider. As a token of my appreciation for your contribution to tonight.
Honestly, it would be good to bring back some Vermont memories beyond the cold. I don't need the cold, but I can do some frozen cider.
Very nice.
All right, Ian, back to you.
Thank you so much. Well, I think we've had a fantastic night of. I know I'm starving watching the action here and tasting these gorgeous wines and talking about all the food. Matt, is there anything you want to say in closing?
No, it's been an honor. Bob, I really loved getting to meet you on Zoom, and yeah, it's just an honor to be able to speak about these wines because they're so near and dear to my heart, and they're such small production that oftentimes I'm not able to pour them for people and talk about them. But am so passionate about the properties and the projects, and I just think they're soulful wines that speak of a place. And I feel like that's kind of rare these days sometimes, to find a wine that speaks of a parcel on this earth. And these are just kind of sincere expressions of places I feel really blessed to work with.
Well, thank you for bringing them to us tonight, and everybody. David, did you want to say something?
Me? No, I'm done. I talked too much. I just it was a great night. Thank you all. We'll see you up in wine country hopefully soon.
Sir, Drew.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you to everybody for being here. Matt, awesome, great presentation. Thank you so much, Matt. Always a pleasure to have your wines and to be a part of both of your programs, and it's such an honor to be working with you, my friend. Thank you.
Oh, that's great. I hope we can all do it in person some point soon, doggone.
Yes, absolutely. It's coming. It's coming.
Here's to that.
Yeah.
Cheers,
What a
guys.
celebration that will be. But yeah, no, again, super cool. Thank
Well,
you.
we're going to give Drew a shot to invite each of you guys to join his mailing list for Mr. Kimsey's Vineyard in Melrose. And so those of you that are on the Zoom, because these wines are purchased directly from the wineries. And so if you'd like to participate, and you've got the literature that we sent with the wines, and these are beautiful as well, guys, both the Kimsey and the Melrose releases. If you didn't get these, let me know. But I think we got them all out. Maybe one out-of-stater didn't get these, but we try to include all the information here. But if you want to participate and be on the mailing list, let me know. But we'll have Drew send you a little note to invite you. And these are really, really special wines, guys. They're direct from the winery. Something that if you're going to open up something great for special friends, a special meal, you want something that probably somebody hasn't tried before. These are those type of wines. These are like the great finds of California. And Matt, so cool to be able to talk to you about them. So thank you very, very much.
I also wanted to extend an invitation to everyone here that if you happen to be in the area, or if you know you're going to be up in Santa Barbara County or in San Ynez, please reach out to me, and maybe we could do a little tour of the Mount Carmel Vineyard. And if Bill's around, we could tour Kimsey as well. So it might be nice to actually see where all these wines are coming from firsthand. So thank you, everybody.
And if you need a place to stay, maybe we could stay at the Mount Carmel.
Well, actually, Matt's house is great, and they're serving pigeon.
Yeah, the monastery is lovely this time of year.
You can always come here for spotted owl and bald eagle too.
I would love it. That'd be great. A little peregrine falcon, anything would be great. But that hairdo, man, I'm loving it. Keep it rocking. You look like a rock star, man. You're bringing back
just another bad hair day. What can I say?
Wonderful to see everybody. Thank you very much.
Oh, thanks very much.
We look forward to seeing you soon. We got some awesome things coming down the lines. Check out Zoom into Wine. We're working really, really hard on the calendar, and I hope you guys will check it out. It is our daily work, and I've got a team of designers helping me build some really fun stuff. And I just got to share one really fun thing, because our Stars of Napa is basically sold out. Next Wednesday, just kind of like tonight, we're talking about tonight and think good things came together. Next Wednesday, the same thing is happening, because a friend of mine, Troy Christensen, a great winemaker, a great filmmaker, sorry, has come up with, he's been working on this film for a long time. And it's called A Perfect Vintage. And it's a really fascinating, beautiful cinematography is amazing. He's getting all kinds of awards for this film. It's being shown at the Sonoma International Film Festival next Wednesday. And so we're going to have the entire cast on the Zoom with us talking about A Perfect Vintage. And I tied it in to vintage port. So we're going to do 2002 Colheita and 03 Quinta de Crosto port and talk about the difference of a year and the difference of winemaking style. And we've got a couple of winemakers on the Zoom. We've got Christopher Sawyer, Timothy Milos from the movie, and we're going to talk about entering the movie into the Sonoma County the festival. And we've got this really beautiful film, by the way, and everyone will get a chance to watch the film and learn all about it, and maybe even want to join the film festival and watch 30 films, because it's got a bunch of really, really nice little art house opportunities. So join us. We've got bottle kits for $80 to taste a bottle of each. That's a great deal. And or join me for the $50 kit, and I send you a taste, and you get $20 off that night on any of the wines. So that's all I'm going to plug at this time, but I hope you guys will come back and see us all really, really soon. And thank you very much for everybody for being here. Matt, Bill, Drew, Chef Bob, you guys have a great night, everybody.
Thanks, Ian.
Thanks, Ian.
Thanks, Ian.
Much.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.